Boop, 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 boop. Yes, I know it's more of just an oop, boop, boop, but I wanted to do it in the tune of the theme song because Monokuma's theme is so good. Anyways, so I've had Danganronpa on the brain for a while now. And part of that is I'm playing Raincoat at the moment, so I've got Kodaka murder mystery games on the brain. Let's give me a comfy spot. I want to have my plush with me. I also remember seeing like a Danganronpa 2x2 event when I was in Tokyo, and I actually took a picture with someone like in the Monokuma suit. That was really fun. There was a tweet I saw a few weeks ago of Monokuma hanging out with his new best friend Pac-Man, which was a pairing I was not expecting. But I've been seeing Danganronpa and I've had it on the brain. So I've been thinking for... Sorry, I think that was a hair. But I've been thinking for a while now about what are my predictions for the deaths in 2x2. And I've come up with a list, like a chapter by chapter. This is who I think is going to be. This is my prediction for the victim. This is my prediction for the black end, etc., etc. But I have 3 rules that I decided to play with. Oh, hi, Bahamut. Do you want to come sit with me in the bear? He does want to sit with me in the bear. I might have to move Monokuma. So, never mind. Bahamut got off me. Maybe I was just a springboard so he could go get food. Anyways, to my point. I had 3 rules that I played with while making this list. Rule number 1 is that no character can have the same status they did in the original game. Meaning, if you were a survivor, you have to be either a victim or a culprit. If you were a victim, you are now either a culprit or a survivor. And if you were the blackened, you're either going to be a victim or a survivor. Number 2, I have no characters dying in the same chapter they died in the original game. And on the flip side of that, none of the survivors of the original game I have making it to chapter 6. And also, this game needs to follow series tradition and have a unique number of survivors. In the original game, there was 6. Or excuse me, in the first game, Trigger Happy Havoc, it was 6. In the original Danganronpa 2, it was 5. And then in V3, it was 3. So 2 times 2 is 4. So 2x2, I wanted to have 4. So those are the rules I decided to play with. And I looked at like every chapter of every game and was like, okay, what commonalities are there between the victims and or killers of each chapter, and go from there. So as I think it kind of goes without saying, there's going to be spoilers here for Trigger Happy Havoc, for Trigger Happy Havoc, for Super Danganronpa 2, as well as V3. And definitely when 2x2 comes out, I'm going to revisit this, and I kind of want to see how many I get right. Like, okay, if I get the chapter right, that's half a point. If I get a character status right, that's half a point. And if they were both right, that's a full point for a total of 16. I could end up with 0 points when I revisit all of this, because there are some where I'm like, look, do I really think it's going to happen this way? Probably not. I definitely think there are some characters that are going to end up with the same status. I don't have any, like, specific theories on this, but, like, there's probably at least one character that'll get executed twice. Which, if that happens, I hope, especially if it ends up, like I've said, spoilers are now live, so I can say this. If Mikon ends up being a killer again, I really hope she gets a different execution, because I think her original one is the worst in the series. But I wouldn't be surprised if some got reused, if some characters still end up being the victim. Maybe it's in a different chapter. I don't know. But with all that, let's go. So chapter 1. To me, the commonality between chapter 1s is that the victim is always a character that seems like they're going to be really important. In the first game, I keep wanting to say the original game, meaning Trigger Happy Havoc. But there's also points where I say the original game, and I just mean the original version of Super Danganronpa. And, like, every time I'm about to say it, I'm like, I gotta make it clear if I'm talking about the first game or the second game. But in the first game, Sayaka is presented as, this is Makoto's second in command, not second in command, but like this is his associate. Yeah. Try that again. His assistant. Why was that so hard? Like, this is his assistant. This is his Watson. Although Kyoko is more of the Sherlock. Anyways, this is your assistant throughout the game. This is going to be your companion. She ends up being the first one killed. In Super Danganronpa 2, it's Togami. It's like, here's a recurring character who's a bit different than I remember, but he's clearly going to be important, right? First one dead. And then in V3, it's Rantaro, who is your question mark, who always ends up being a major character. So, for 2x2, I feel like to keep that going, it has to be either A, one of the original survivors, so that way it's just kind of a way to let the players know, like, yeah, this is going to be a completely different scenario. Not everyone who survived the original game is going to survive. We're already down one. Whether it's none of them survive like I have it, I don't know. Alternatively, it might be one of our big three of Hinata, Nagito, and Nanami. And I'll just go ahead and say this as well. There will be times where I refer to characters by their first name, times where I refer to characters by their last name. It's just, with some characters, I just kind of know them as both, so I might call them both. I'm probably, aside from this example, never going to refer to Sonya as Nevermind. But with the other characters, like with Hinata or like Nanami, I'll probably go back and forth. But I could see it being one of those three, is like, yeah, these are the major characters from the first game, particularly Nagito and Chiaki. To me, they are the mascots of Danganronpa 2. So losing one of them as the first victim, I think would be a really bold move. But what I ended up going with is, I actually have Hinata being the first victim, and I have Fuyuhiko being the killer. So that way, we lose two survivors. It is just a full, no holds barred, anyone can die in 2x2. This is a completely different game. And there is that part of me that goes, okay, so V3 was the last game, which means this is 2 games in a row where the ultimate question mark is the first victim, as well as the presumptive main character also dying in the first chapter. Like, we really gonna do this 2 games in a row? But I'm not really sure where else to kill Hinata. I think chapter 5 could work, but I have some other ideas for chapter 5. And again, I think if you really want to establish 2x2 as this is going to be something very different and no one is safe, I think killing Hinata in chapter 1 is a good way of doing that. I don't really know, like, I really would want to see kind of what they do with that, particularly in chapter 6, because I don't really know what we're going to do. I actually saw a theory about this the other day. It's possible that what 2x2 is actually kind of like a stealth prequel, and it's a killing game that happens in the simulation, and at the end, when they have a chance, like, reboot the simulation, like, Monokuma like hijacks it and reboots it to just do the killing game again, which then leads to the, like, original Danganronpa 2 storyline, which I think would be kind of a fun idea. But anyway, I have Hinata being the first victim, and then for the first killer, there's not really a commonality involved in that when I look at, like, Kaede. Okay, so the presumptive main character, this was a really big deal for her to be the killer in V3, even though she technically wasn't. But then, in the second game with Teru, like, this wasn't really a main character. Like, I don't remember him having significantly more spotlight or screen time than the other characters. And then with Leon in the first game, I remember thinking he had maybe slightly more, but not significantly. So there's not really a commonality there. I just think, I'm like, look, I love Kuzuryu. There is a heart of gold in that kid, but he is also prone to flying off the handle. He was damn near the killer in the original chapter 2 if it wasn't for Peko stepping in. I could see him in some scenarios being the first killer and then having to pay the price. And I do think if that were to happen, Peko, without him involved in the story, I could see her becoming one of the main rivals of the game with just a, like, okay, I understand what he did. I know what he did was wrong. But y'all killed my guy. So now I kind of have it out for everybody. Not in the same way with Nagito, where she's, like, that crazy. But I could see Peko almost, like, slowly but sure, like, kind of learning, like, okay, this is how you... This is what all the other killers are doing wrong. So this is what I will need to do when I make my move, kind of thing. And I think that could be really interesting. And I was taking a walk the other day, and I was trying to think, like, what could be an interesting execution for Fuyuhiko? And I was thinking, well, you know, I'm not super familiar with the Yakuza, but I do think, like, tattoos are a big part of it. So what if he has a thing where it's like, okay, like, you know, you killed your first person, now you get, like, you're gonna get marked with a tattoo, but, you know, Monokuma is, like, doing it with a sword, like, on his back, just, like, engraving something, and, you know, by the end of it, like, Fuyuhiko bleeds to death, and it'd be really dark and violent. But then, like, you see at the very end, there's, like, this tattoo of, like, Monokuma wearing a freaking Yakuza outfit, like, holding a sword or some shit. Like, I don't know, but it's one of those things where, like, in my head, it looks really cool and just, like, really brutal. But I don't know, maybe it's kind of silly. But that's my idea for Chapter 1. For Chapter 2, there's a few commonalities here. So number 1, this is one where there's usually a lot of misdirection, or at the very least, there's a really obvious killer based on the crime scene and the information, and it is not that person at all because they are being framed by the actual culprit. In the first game, that's, what's her name? It's Toko Fukawa, I think is it? But it's Toko. Specifically the, you know, Genocide Jack or Genocide Jill, I think is the English name. It was like Genocider Show, I think was the Japanese name. Because I was first introduced to Danganronpa by watching the anime and it was subbed. So I was like, Genocider Show? What the hell is a genocider? I guess it means someone who commits genocide, so serial killer, okay. But she was being set up, and it turns out she was being set up by Togami because he messed with the crime scene, but he also wasn't the killer, so there was another layer of misdirection. It was actually our boy Mondo. And then in the second game, it was Hyoko was being set up. She was being set up by Kuzuryu because he was going to be the killer, and he very nearly did, but then Peko stepped in and did her whole, like, well, I don't remember the name of her, like, hero of, like, her Sailor Moon alter ego. To be like, alright, I did it. I'm the killer. It was totally me. And then, no, it wasn't. I was the murder weapon. And Monokuma ultimately is like, Fuyuhiko, are you gonna buy that? Because if you do, I'll let it happen. No. I like Peko too much as, like, she's a person. She's not a tool. Like, alright. She's gonna die then, buddy. Boop, 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 boop. But, okay, sorry. And then in the third game, if I remember it correctly, it was Himiko was being set up because Ryoma's death happened during her show. And I don't remember if there was another layer of misdirection on that. It's been like 10 years since I played it. But I remember Himiko was the one being framed by... Was it Kirumi was her name? It was the maid. I think it was like Kirumi Tojo. So there was it's at least consistent that there is someone being framed, someone being clearly set up. There's some misdirection going on. But each killer also has some sense of, like, honor or duty to them. With Kirumi being, I am the... what's the term I'm looking for? She's not president. Why is my brain not working? Prime Minister, thank you. She's the Prime Minister of Japan, and she has to go back to look after her people. You have Peko and her duty to look after Fuyuhiko, and you have Mondo with his sense of duty and honor of not wanting to reveal Chihiro's secret. There's almost a commonality with these being crimes of passion. Like with Mondo, it definitely was. With Peko, it was Fuyuhiko almost committed a crime of passion, and then she had to step in to stop it. And then with Kiyumi, it just was not a crime of passion at all. So not quite. It's like 1.5 out of 3 or sort of like that. So I don't think that for me was enough of a commonality to stick with. But I did think, okay, if this is a situation where someone is deliberately trying to frame someone else, I would want Mikon to be the victim, because the doctor and the autopsy report that she provides might be something that screws the killer over. And if it is not just a crime of passion, or it's like, my dude's about to do something, I need to do something now, and then we'll kind of figure it out later. If this is a more premeditated murder, and I'm treating it as if it is, I think Mikon is a good choice for the killer to go after. And there was a while where I considered the imposter to be the killer here. I was like, okay, like for misdirection, that is a really cool idea for a chapter. It's like actually being other people in the cast. I'm still kind of tempted to do that. But ultimately, I ended up going with Sonia. And for me, part of that is, from what I remember, Sonia is someone who's really well versed in a lot of different areas. Like, her weirdness is more of like kind of being a fish out of water, rather than like, no, she's kind of dumb. Because from what I remember, no, Sonia is actually pretty intelligent. So her being someone that could mastermind a murder and really try to set stuff up and frame people, not sure who she would frame. It's Sonia, so maybe she just picks Soda, which would be pretty funny. I could see that happening. And as in terms of being a duty-bound killer, I mean, it's something that was used in the last game. So I guess that's 2 in a row where I'm kind of borrowing something from V3. She is literally a princess. It could be, I'm a princess, I gotta go home, I gotta see my people. I don't know, man. Like, Pekko's already been used here, and she's kind of the perfect choice for it. I could definitely see something with Gundam. I mean, that was kind of his motivation in Chapter 4, but I can't use him as a killer again. And from that perspective, there's maybe something with Nidai, but I'll go and spoil. I have him surviving, because I'm not really sure where else to kill him. I guess, yeah, I could have killed him here, but I'm not gonna lie, part of it is also, I think Sonia could potentially have a really neat execution, and I want to see what they would do with it. It was something else I was kind of thinking of the other day, like after I thought of Fuyuhiko, I was like, alright, I have Sonia next up, what could be a cool thing for her? And I was thinking maybe for her, because she's a princess, it could be almost like a French Revolution sort of thing, where she's just kind of being slowly brought before the guillotine. Is it Gillo or guillotine? I kind of go back and forth. I think I usually go with guillotine, but it might be guillotine. But anyways, she's like being brought before the guillotine, and just as the music is building up, when you get the it's just like when you freaking see it for the first time, like comes out like a piece of fruit, just and it starts going like super fast, like cutting all this random stuff like before it gets to Sonia, and then you get the close up on Sonia's face, and she starts turning blue and it starts getting like really nervous. And then it goes down and the screen just like goes black, and then there's the Pepto-Bismol all over the screen getting splattered. Like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And I thought of another one because I remember seeing a thing several years ago, and it was like a fan had like made art of potential executions, and my understanding is these are not canon. These are purely fan made. But the idea essentially of Sonia being forced to eat a poisoned apple and it being like a big Snow White thing, I'm like, I could kind of see that too. I could kind of see them like almost be one execution, like she's being led up to the guillotine and it seems like that's what's gonna happen, and then the guillotine cuts the apple and she's like forced to eat the poisoned apple. But then afterwards, she gets like the really pretty tomb like that the dwarves made for Snow White, and especially if they are trying to portray this as a more sympathetic killer, that she gets a more kind of sweeter execution, like the way that Gundam did in the original chapter 4. I could go with that. I would kind of like either of those. But that's what I have for chapter 2. Chapter 3 it's the double murder. That's always the big thing in chapter 3. Excuse me. It is consistently a double murder with both victims being the same gender. In the first game, it was Hifumi and Ishimaru. My boy, dude, I was so upset when he died. They were both killed by Celeste, and then, well, Hifumi killed Ishimaru, Celeste killed him, but she masterminded the whole thing. Then in the second game was Mikon killed Hiyoko and my girl Ibuki, which is also 2 games in a row where I'm like, my favorite character got murdered in chapter 3. I hate this series. And then in V3 was Kyo killing Angie and Tenko. So we have had a girl kill 2 boys, a girl kill 2 girls, and then a boy kill 2 girls. We don't have a boy killing 2 boys. So that's what I did here. This is where I was like, okay, I'm going to put Gundam and Teru Teru here. Unfortunately, I don't have Gundam surviving. But at this point, I'm like, okay, so who are the boys that I would be willing to kill? I'm not going to kill Nagito here. I feel like that's kind of way too early to lose him. I'm not going to kill the imposter because I have other plans for him. So that really just leaves Gundam, Teru Teru, and Soda. I mean, again, like I could have... Well, and then with Nidai, I'm like, well, he can't be the victim because he was the victim in chapter 4. Could I see him as a killer? Maybe. Sure, but... I don't know. For some reason, I'm not buying it. I could maybe buy it in chapter 2 as like someone like a sense of code and a sense of honor. I don't really see it here. Is there really a commonality between the killers? I'm not sure. I don't know. I feel like the killers in chapter 3 do kind of tend to be more like straight up villainous characters, just pure assholes, with Mikon being so because of the despair fever. Which isn't something I really considered. If that's the case, I guess you could throw Nagito there as the potential killer. But I just have it being Soda. I wasn't really sure what else to do with Soda, I'm gonna be honest. So, like, congratulations, buddy. I guess, like, Sonya died. Soda kind of snapped. He's having his crash out, and he ends up being the killer. I don't really know what to do with his execution. I think as a mechanic, like, there are some cool ideas, but my brain just wasn't coming up with anything, but that's what I have there. Chapter 4. Chapter 4 to me has 2 commonalities. Number 1, this is where the big guy always dies. You have Sakura being killed by Sakura as a suicide. And the second game is Nidai being killed by Gundam. And then the third game was Miyu being killed by Gonta. Which I specifically remember playing V3, and I was like, okay. Like, when I first saw Gonta in the game, like, you're gonna die in chapter 4, buddy. And then it happened. I was like, yeah, Danganronpa, no, like, they have very specific tells in this series, man. But also, the killers tend to be sympathetic. You have Sakura committing suicide because she, as the mole, she was the motive and said, like, I'm gonna go ahead and take myself out, so no one else has to be the culprit and no one has to be executed for it. You have Gundam and Nidai agreeing to a duel, like, one of us will die, the other will be the black end, so we can essentially get everyone else out of here and, like, get out of this, like, starving situation. And then with Gonta, that was genuinely an accident. So with that in mind, if Nidai can't die here because he was already killed in chapter 4, the only other character that really fits to me as like a big unga bunga would be Akane, so I have her getting killed in this chapter as the victim. As for the killer and like the sympathetic motivation, to be fair, you could kind of do that with pretty much anyone. It would really just depend on what is the motive in this chapter. how has the story unfolded to this point. I have two killers. I have Mahiru and Hiyoko working together to kill Akane, and a double execution. And I will go ahead and say, genuinely, like, dead ass, because Hiyoko was originally going to survive in SDR2, I think she's probably going to end up surviving in 2x2. But I'm sorry, I've been wanting a double execution since Pecos. Like, when I saw that, and I saw that Fuyuhiko was in there, I was like, wait, what? And then, like, when she cuts him, I was like, did we just get a double execution? Like, that's crazy! And then he survived. I'm like, well, he survived. But I was like, man, that... I kind of want that to happen in the next game. And then, like, the entirety of V3, I was like, man, like, are we gonna do that? Like, Chapter 3 is a double murder. Are we gonna get 2 people killed? And then V3 adds a rule where it's, okay, if there's a double murder, only the first culprit is gonna be killed. Only they are considered the blackened. Doesn't matter that someone else got killed by a completely different person. Which, it was essentially the same killer for both, so it didn't really matter. But then in Chapter 4, they specifically bring up if there's a vote split and it is dead even between 2 people and one of them is the culprit, like tie goes to everyone else. Excuse me. And I don't remember if Monokuma specifically said, yeah, I just killed them both. But I remember reading that and thinking, okay. So if there's an even vote split, we could theoretically still get a double execution. And I've gotta have one, man. You let me have this. And I was thinking, like, if we were to do that, for all I know, maybe that is the theoretical motive of this chapter is, okay, if you have an accomplice, both of you can get out free, so long as you do so, like, without getting caught. And I was like, okay, well, Mahiru and Hiyoko are both here, and I remember in the original SDR2, they were very close, so maybe they team up. I, again, do remember Hiyoko being someone who was very, very anti-killing. You can also say that about a lot of characters in this series who end up committing a murder. Look at Kaede. And so that's what I have. I think for me, the idea I had is, like, they poison something that Akane is going to eat, and the idea is that they literally, like, both apply the poison at the, like, it's like in an eyedropper or something, they both kind of squish it at the same time, so it is genuinely impossible to tell which of them is truly the culprit, so they have to split the vote. And I kind of go back and forth when it comes to double executions. Because again, this is something as a concept I've thought about for a long time. Is, would it be, here's the first here's the first student's execution and then here's the second, like, back to back, or do they just kind of get combined into one, like, super execution? So with this, I did the latter, where I kind of thought about it for a bit, where because Mahiru is a photographer and Hiyoko is a performer, like, specifically a dancer, it's essentially a photo shoot, but then, like, the photo shoot ends up getting, like, crashed by the paparazzi, I guess by, like, the Monokuma paparazzi, and, like, Mahiru is trying to defend Hiyoko, but, like, she ends up, like, dying in a stampede of just people trying to rush. Hiyoko is trying to run, she's trying to escape, and, like, she gets out, but they're on, like, a cliff, because of course they are, and then, like, she ends up falling and dies. I don't know, they could probably do something better than that, but it was something I thought of. I just want to see a double execution, because I think it'd be neat. And then in Chapter 5, there's a commonality here, although in the first game it's kind of weird, but generally it is a rival character is murdered by a major ally. Because in the first game, no one dies in Chapter 5, but it is specifically investigating Bukuro Ikubasa, the 16th student hidden somewhere in the school. But it's specifically investigating her murder, and given her role in the story, this is a rival character. And depending on the choices you pick, either Makoto is falsely convicted but survives the execution, or in the bad ending, it's Kyoko. Either way, that is a major ally character, either your main character or your biggest ally getting killed. In the second game, this is Nagito committing his pseudocide, but setting it up so that Chiaki is technically the killer and she gets executed. Or in the third game with Kokichi and Kaito. So here, as I've said before, I have Peko after Kuzuryu dies kind of becoming that big rival character. But because she has already been a culprit, she ends up being the victim, and the person that kills her is the imposter. Because I do like the idea of the oh yeah, I didn't actually say who would probably become the main character after losing Hinata. To me, it's Nanami. And I think part of that is like, look, man, we have not had a female protagonist in I mean, technically in like Ultra Despair Girls, but in like a mainline killing game, Danganronpa, we have not had a female protagonist. We almost did in V3, but then she died, like Kaede died, and then we had Shuichi. I really like Shuichi. Like, I don't want to rag on him at all. But I guess this time I'm kind of doing the opposite. So I think Chiaki ends up being the main character, and I think the imposter ends up becoming a major ally to her. So the imposter ends up dying, and I'm not really sure for his execution. Because assuming he is still playing Togami, and he's consistent, because I've thought, like, I don't remember the name of the animator. It's like Ryota, I think. There's a chance in the 2x2 scenario, especially if it is like a prequel, like this is the first killing game, then they rebooted it, he could definitely, Ryota Mirai, I think was his name, he might end up playing the animator instead, and I think that would be pretty interesting. Sorry, brain went dark for a second. That could be a thing. So if that's the case, the execution could be related to Mirai. If he is still Togami, they could use the human disqualification, unused execution from the original Danganronpa. There's also a chance they just do something weird with the imposter, and it's like, because you could be anybody, it's just kind of a slew of potential executions. Something kind of like what Junko went through. I'm not sure, but that's what I had. And then that means in Chapter 6, we are left with 4 people. That's Chiaki, Nagito, Nidai, and my curly Pookie. So that's that. Those are my just kind of spitballing some ideas of like, okay, can I think of a scenario where everyone has a different fate, no one dies in the same chapter, and we get 4 survivors at the end? And this is what I came up with. Like I said, I don't necessarily expect Kodaka and the team to follow those exact rules. I think we'll probably get some characters who have similar fates. I expect we will probably see some characters die in the same chapters that they did originally. I think it would be really funny if Nidai still dies in chapter 4. Like, look, he's the big guy. That's what chapter 4 is for, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. But I do definitely want to revisit this once 2x2 comes out to see, I guess, number one, how many of these did I actually get right? But also, number 2, did they follow the commonalities even if I got the wrong person? Like, oh, okay, it turns out that Peko and the imposter were not rival and ally characters the way they are in this imaginary scenario, but that's still what was followed. Or like, oh, what do you know? It was still 2 dudes killed by a dude for the double murder in chapter 3. It just worked separately. Or maybe in chapter 3 is the double execution. That would be super neat. But, I think that's about it for this one. I think I've rambled. What do you think? Have we rambled long enough? He says, ooh, poo poo.